Okay, so this is my state of the collection video, and I'm just gonna go off on a few tangents about my watch, so I appreciate you watching this video. I guess I might as well start from the very beginning of my watch journey, and it was with the Casio A158W. This watch is extremely important to me because it was the first watch that got me into this entire hobby. And the reason I actually got into this hobby is because I needed a watch for a business competition and they didn't allow for smartwatches. So I did a lot of research into watches and what watch I should buy, what my first watch should ever be. I didn't plan on getting more than one watch. I wasn't even aware that collecting multiple watches was even a thing for people who didn't make millions a year. I just have this tendency to do hyper obsessive research about something before I buy it. Yeah, I stumbled upon the Casio A158W, and also I use it anytime I need the exact time or very accurate time. So for instance, if I'm taking a test, if I'm timing something with a stopwatch. I mean, I have a chronograph, a dedicated chronograph, but if I ever need to know things down to the second, I will use my Casio A158W, and it's been scratched up, it's been banged up, and it really looks like it's been worn, and I really appreciate that about it. And as I mentioned in my other review that you can check out, it's not a perfect watch. There are problems, of course. It has a mineral crystal. It has a pretty poor green backlight on the left side. It's basically not stainless steel for the case, which I think I would have preferred. But all of these sort of quirks pertaining to this watch just make me like it a little bit more. I have been tempted to buy other Casios, but I haven't pulled the trigger on any of them just because I really want to grow with my Casio A158W. And when I get older, I want to be able to pick it up and think, yeah, that was my Casio. That was the Casio I wore throughout my adolescent years. If you're enjoying this video, I definitely recommend hitting that like and subscribe button and commenting down below, because as always, I respond to basically all of your comments in the comment section down below. For all of these watches, I will have links in the description down below, and some of them will be affiliate links, which means I do get a commission, but again, it comes at no extra cost to you, and it just supports the channel immensely. I guess I'll go on to my Pagani Yacht-Master. So originally I bought it on a Jubilee bracelet. I switched it out onto a sailcloth currently, but this watch is a very interesting watch, and it's because I bought this after my first automatic watch, which I mentioned in my first State of the Collection video. It's an Oakston watch, but I don't really consider it to be part of my collection. It's kind of just sitting aside from the watch box in its own little corner because I don't know what to do with it. And that's because the seconds hand kind of jumped around the dial. It was not working properly. If you're interested in checking that watch out or seeing what it looks like, I have my first State of the Collection video that includes that. But just kind of skipping over that, I was kind of disappointed with that watch. So I did a ton of research into Seiko movements and just a ton of research into watches and automatic watches themselves. And I found out that I could afford an automatic watch. And I made an entire video about why you should avoid clomages. But frankly, as I mentioned in my other video, I've done some reflection and I've realized that clomages aren't the end of the world. In fact, I remember the joy of finding out that I could afford an automatic movement that did not have serious flaws with it. Because I remember going into this hobby and finding out about larger brands such as Seiko, Orient, a ton of other brands, and I was not willing to spend more than over $100 on a watch. And so I thought that automatic watches were completely out of my reach. I would have to wait till I was 30 years old or something in order to actually afford an automatic watch. So when I found out about the brand Pagani, it was really fun. I mean, I remember being so happy that I could afford a watch that had very similar specifications to a Seiko, but with Pagani. I mean, it even uses the same movement. When I got it in, I think I dropped it on the floor, and I was extremely worried about it because I'd heard so many stories about automatic watches being so fragile and you have to be so careful. But honestly, this Pagani has been a complete champion. I mean, I've dropped it. I think I went tubing with it. I've driven a boat with it a few times, and it's gotten wet in the lake, and made sure I've tested out the water resistance, and it's been holding up amazingly. It's one of my most accurate watches to date. I think it runs currently, I want to say plus 5 seconds a day, maybe less. Yeah, it's just a great watch, and I think I've been calling it Pagani, but I think it's actually Pagrne, which is just Pagani's sub-brand that they sell in other countries, because I think Pagani is actually a car brand, so it's illegal to use Pagani in other countries, so they use Pagrne, and I think Pagrne is actually cheaper, so that's why I bought it in the first place. It was fun, it was a great purchase. I still sort of wear it to this day. But I'll get on to the Sanda Tank. I also made a video about this Sanda Tank, and I was watching Top Tier Ticker, and he was raving about this watch. And this was also the time where I was watching a lot of Theo and Harris, and I really fell in love with elegant dress watches. In fact, I made a whole video about why you should buy a dress watch, and I completely stand by it. I think everyone who's in this hobby should buy a dress watch of some sort, and I really came to appreciate smaller, more elegant watches, and I actually stopped wearing bracelets for a while. I started putting all my watches on NATO straps or a leather strap because I liked the lightness of it, but I eventually went back to bracelets. It's kind of an ebb and flow in this watch hobby. But when this arrived in the mail, I mean, I couldn't believe it. You can't even buy a Casio for 15 Canadian dollars. So it was just astonishing that you could get a working watch with a Seiko quartz movement with, mind you, a zinc alloy case, but a watch nonetheless for $15 that looked good and has so far held up against the test of time. I guess I'll talk about my Pagani Daytona. It has a meteorite dial. Okay, I'll be completely honest here. At this point in my collecting journey, I watched a ton of videos of the do's and don'ts of watch collecting, and one of the big don'ts is don't be the person who just collects every single type of watch for the sake of getting every single type of watch. And as always, I mean, when I watched these videos, I didn't listen to their advice, I didn't internalize it. I thought maybe I was different, but just like the Oakston and it being too big for my wrist, I didn't listen to their advice, and I realized they were completely right. I've done some reflection just later on in my collecting journey, and I realized that I could have gotten watches that I liked instead of just checking off boxes. But nonetheless, I'm very happy with this Pagani Daytona homage. I didn't get the Pagani Daytona because it looks like a Daytona. I actually wanted to go for something similar to the Omega Speedmaster. I prefer that design over the Daytona, but it just wouldn't have suited my wrist as well. I opted for the Pagani Daytona because I just wanted a chronograph in my collection, and the dial is absolutely stunning. It wears very comfortably. I didn't have any real issues up until recently where I realized that the chronograph hand is actually bent. Now, I have not seen that issue with any watches that I looked at online, so I'm really confused about this particular one. Currently, I'm not wearing it as much because it makes me a little bit sad that my chronograph hand is bent and I can't really use my chronograph because it is bent. Up until I realized it was bent, I had an amazing time. It was great. The meteorite dial was stunning. I got to look at it from a ton of different angles, and it looked beautiful. Also, I made a video on that watch, a full review if you're interested in checking that out. I think I have a review on basically every single one of my watches if you're interested. What happened was Namoki reached out to me. That's the great thing about this whole YouTube thing, is that I would have never gotten into Seiko modding if it weren't for this YouTube channel. I just want to say thank you so much for watching these videos. Thank you so much for engaging with the channel. Thank you so much for commenting. If it weren't for you who were watching this video, I would have never even thought about taking apart a watch. So I just want to thank you for that. If you've seen the video, I got kind of frustrated and I thought, I don't really know if I want to build any more watches after this. This is a pretty frustrating experience, and thus far I've built 7 watches and I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, I've had so much fun building watches, and honestly, my Namoki Grand Seiko homage is one of my most complimented watches to this day, and I save it for special occasions. It has a boxed sapphire crystal. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful, and I have a connection to it because it was my first watch that I built, and I brought it to Belize, and I remember being so afraid that the salt water would damage it, and it didn't. I mean, my Namoki held up in the salt water, in the shocks from the boat when we were rushing back to the airport. This is an interesting story. At this point in time, I was kind of opposed to clomages. I didn't really like them at this point. So when I got my Pagani GMT, it took me a little while, but when I brought it to Rome, it kind of sparked this thing in me, and it reignited my appreciation for clomage watches. At the start of this hobby, one of my grail watches was the Rolex Pepsi GMT. I really wanted one of them, and so when I found out that Pagani was making an homage to the GMT, or a clomage, I was super excited, but then the Seiko NH34 hadn't come out yet, so I was wondering about the movement, and I wasn't too sure if I wanted a pearl movement, and then the Seiko NH34 came out, and it seemed like the stars had aligned. I really wanted a GMT, but what happened was, I think I asked for it at some point in time, and then it was given to me for Christmas. It was one of my favorite watches that I wore, and if you were following my Instagram, I wore it throughout my entire trip to Italy, and I wore it in Rome. It was so much fun. I put it on a blue NATO strap. Again, handled everything like a champ. I think it got wet. I think it got in salt water. It went through metal detectors. With all the gripes I have with Pagani and their quality control, I mean, again, this Seiko NH34 is one of my most accurate watches to date, and I think it's also running +2 seconds a day. So it's running phenomenally. I think I should wear it a little bit more often. But recently I've been doing other reviews for other watches, so I've been wearing those watches, but I still have an appreciation for that watch. I bought parts for my DIY watch off AliExpress, and I bought it on my birthday, but what happened was, I think the GMT hand got delayed, so that's where I learned my lesson about the difference between AliExpress shipping and AliExpress choice shipping. Please, when you're buying off AliExpress, I definitely recommend buying off choice. The shipping is just better, more reliable, it's quicker. My inspiration for that was actually Elliot Cole. He was building his own watches, and he still is to this day, but one of his videos went absolutely viral, almost 1 million views at this point, and I was heavily inspired to build my own watch off AliExpress. And considering I already built my own Namoki, I wanted to take a swing at building one off AliExpress. I nicknamed it the Snowman because it kind of reminds me of the Grand Seiko Snowflake because it has a glacier dial, blue hands, the white and blue. It also has snowflake hands. I don't know, I just named it the Snowman. Reminds me of the winter. I mean, it combined, as I mentioned in that video, definitely recommend go checking that out. It's a ton of fun to make that video. It had all the components, all the aspects of all my favorite watches into one. It is a small 36mm watch with a fluted bezel, a Datejust-esque case, which again at this point I loved Datejust, didn't like the date window. Yeah, and I was watching a lot of Theo and Harris, so I liked it on a leather strap, and I also loved the Seiko Snowflake and just GMTs in general, and it melded into this beautiful watch. And I actually brought it to New York City, and I actually remember going to the Grand Seiko boutique. I love the watches at the Grand Seiko boutique. The people there were so absolutely amazing, and I remember holding on to the Grand Seiko watches and just being in awe. But after leaving the boutique, I also grew an appreciation for my own watch collection, and I looked down on my wrist, and I mean, look, Grand Seikos are absolutely phenomenal, but at this point in my life, this watch is more than enough. I mean, I don't know anyone at my age who has built their own watch and customized it to just their liking. Everything is fine-tuned for their own personal tastes. I grew an appreciation, even more of an appreciation for this watch. I got sent in 2 Tandorios, one bronze Tandorio and one SKX or orange Tandorio. I made a review on the bronze Pilot Tandorio, and I believe the design was based off the Longines Heritage military watch. I'll have to put it up on screen here. It was so close to perfection. I just really disliked the leather strap, and as I mentioned in the video, it was a minor gripe. I think this watch was great for me in the sense that I got to experiment with a new material, bronze. I learned that case sizing is not the only factor you should keep in mind with watches. The dial size is really important as well, because this was my first Pilot's watch. So I realized that Pilot's watches were a little bit bigger than dive watches because they don't have a bezel. So I don't wear that watch that much because of the dial diameter, but I think if I had a larger wrist, I would appreciate it a ton more. And I think one thing that did help out with the wearing experience was transferring it onto a blue NATO strap. I stand by exactly what I said in the video. An amazing material for the price, a great dial, even though I think I've shown it to some people and they are not too fond of the dial, but I personally really like it. I did a review on the Tandorio homage to the Seiko 013, and it's kind of like a mixture of the SKX 009 and 007 and 013, and it came in a titanium case, and I got the orange sunburst style version, and it came in a waffle rubber strap. And to this day, I think that watch offers amazing value for the money. It's currently selling for around $100 US or so. If you think about it, the SKX lineup that it's based off of is completely discontinued. For the money, you are getting essentially an upgraded SKX for less than what an SKX sells for right now. Because most people remove the Hardlex crystal, put in a sapphire crystal, improve the movement, they put in like an NH35. So you're getting all of those improvements with the titanium case, but for less than what a non-upgraded SKX costs. And then I got the Namoki NRX. Phenomenal watch. I really fell in love with the PRX style case and the fact that you can modify the watches. Namoki encourages you to. They're a modding company after all. It really pulls from the Patek Philippe Nautilus, the Tissot PRX, and the Royal Oak all at once. And you can definitely go check out that video. Highly recommend. To this day, one of my most worn watches. I absolutely adore that watch, and I love the bracelet, I love the dial. It's one of my favorite watches in my collection. It looks so good, it wears so well on my wrist. I just love it. Like, I didn't run into any real build problems. It was just a great watch. I really can't emphasize it enough. Sometimes you just click with certain watches, and that watch was definitely a watch that I clicked with. And then I did a review on the DIY Watch Club kit. It's a skeleton diver. One thing I did notice after the review is that there actually aren't a ton of skeleton divers on the market. It's actually quite unique. It was pretty fun to build. I mean, I hadn't built a diver at that point. It had a sapphire dial, so you could see all the components. My first ever skeleton diver, and I did have some gripes with the NATO strap. I think that the materials could be a little bit more complex. There could be more facets on the case. But as I mentioned in the video, I think that DIY Watch Club really focuses on the user experience when building the watch. And that's their focus, because I think they did a phenomenal job with the packaging. They did a phenomenal job with the tutorials and just hand holding you through everything, giving you 2 sets of hands. They were really there for people who are just starting off in the whole Seiko modding community. So definitely recommend checking them out if you are new to watch building. Seamless watch building experience. I contacted Venezianico because I was super interested in their watches. I mean, they're an Italian watch brand, and as I mentioned in the video, there aren't many Italian watch brands. The only ones that come to mind are Panerai and Unimatic. It's kind of it right now, so I was really intrigued. And then I saw the Musso black dial on their Redentore Ultrablack, which is just extremely unique. I think it won a GPHG award. Yeah, I forgot to mention that in the video, but a very popular watch for a very good reason. It sold out multiple times. Every single time they came out with a new batch, completely sold out. And if you compare it to the Moser & C Vanta Black, it offers phenomenal value. The finishing on the watch, everything was just so refined. Unboxing felt luxurious. It felt like an upper echelon to this watch hobby. The last watch I'm going to talk about is my Namoki Datejust. It's a two-tone Datejust mod, and it has an engine turn bezel. I really like this watch. It has a Sakura pink dial, and it really melds some of my favorite watches together in their design aspects. The Rolex Datejust, the two-tone, one of my favorite watches of all time. After I saw the Seiko two-tone Datejust in American Psycho, I looked into the watch, and I know it's not the Rolex Datejust, but I got into two-tone. I really like the way that vintage Rolex two-tone Datejust look, and that's why I wanted to get an engine turn bezel. As I mentioned before, I had just gone to New York City and checked out the Grand Seiko Shunbun, pink Sakura dial on the Shunbun, absolutely beautiful. So when I saw that Namoki had their own Sakura pink dial, I was super intrigued, and I just kind of fused the two aspects together with gold cathedral hands that harken back to the Seiko Alpinist. I just had a ton of fun building it. Namoki just has extremely high quality parts. I've never had any problems with their parts. Every single watch I've reviewed from them, those watches have the most wrist time. I always find myself reaching for them for any sort of occasion. I want to thank you so much for listening to me ramble on for a little while. I'm just looking at how long I've recorded this video. So yes, I want to thank you so much, not even just for watching this video, but for supporting my channel up until now. It means so much to me being able to cultivate a amazing YouTube community all centered around watches. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this channel patina is like your favorite watch, and I'll see you on another episode on Time Ticker.